Wet rooms are now established in the UK as one of the most desirable alternatives to the traditional bathroom, as they offer a modern, stylish solution for any space. IMPI have brought together all the elements you need to allow the creation of a simple, cost-effective wet room. We've addressed the three key areas that need consideration for your wet room to function correctly: gradient, drainage, and waterproofing. Make sure that you have all the components for the top of the gully: tiling frame, 10mm spacer ring, floor drain base component and membrane clamping ring, height adjuster ring, stainless steel gully cover. Remove the membrane clamping ring from the floor drain base component. Place it to one side, as you will require it later for clamping the tanking membrane into position. If you forget to remove the clamp before the membrane has been applied, you will find it impossible to resolve the problem without damaging the membrane. The 10mm spacer is only required if the floor tiles are 16 to 26mm thick. Firmly press the tiling frame into the top of the height adjuster ring. The installation you are about to see is typical of a suspended timber floor. The working area will need to be clean and free from dirt and dust in order to work efficiently. In addition, the existing floor will need to be checked for level. If it is not level and is found to be running away from the wet floor area, we strongly recommend that this is corrected. Once you have determined where the Aqua deck will be installed, you can place it in position and carefully mark around the outside. After clearly marking this area, the Aqua deck can then be placed to one side. Cut along the line you have drawn, taking care not to damage any cables or pipework that may be concealed beneath the floor. Here we are using a circular saw set at the depth of the floorboards. The floorboards are now removed and the Aqua deck placed into the aperture to check for fit. The Aqua deck will need to be fully supported to prevent any flexing. To do this, all four sides must be supported on timber noggins. These noggins must be positioned so they not only support the edges of the Aqua deck, but also the cut edges of the adjoining floor. A plywood base must also be constructed to support the entire underside of the Aqua deck. This can be done by fixing battens to the sides of the joists and installing 18mm plywood. The plywood base should finish flush with the top of the joists, which should in turn be level on all four sides. This is critical to the overall performance of the Aqua deck, or the drainage will not work correctly. Once the noggins and batten have been secured, you can install the drain pipe and waste trap. Check that you have all the components for the waste trap. Optional 50 to 40mm reducer, waste trap with dip tube and 1.5-inch threaded waste fitting and tightening tool. Prior to connecting the waste trap, remove the dip tube and unscrew the threaded waste fitting. In this installation, we are using a horizontal outlet gully. However, alternative traps are available. The appropriate drain needs to be selected at the time of purchase. To install the gully correctly, the waste pipe of the trap needs to be accurately positioned in order to align with the aperture in the Aqua deck. The reducer and the trap are both coated with solvent cement and connected to form a good seal. It is critical the shower trap aligns with the centre of the Aqua deck aperture before continuing any further. For ease of installation, you may also wish to prop up the level of the waste trap to aid in connecting the threaded waste fitting. Once the pipework and trap have been set into position, replace the 18mm boards and fix them into place using wood screws. Remember to cut a large hole in the center board to allow access to the trap and to accommodate the strengthening ring on the underside of the aqueduct. Finally, ensure that the joists and supporting boards are level before replacing the aqueduct. When you are satisfied that the levels are correct, secure the aqueduct into position using the screws provided. Should any of the pre-countersunk locations be inconvenient, the aqueduct can be drilled anywhere on its surface using a masonry drill bit. The surrounding floor must also finish level with the edges of the aqueduct. So if necessary, raise the floor level by adding a layer of plywood or raise the level of the aqueduct. In some situations, additional treatment will need to be carried out to the existing timber floor. This may require the floor to be overlaid with a tile backer board or suitable plywood. Refer to the relevant British Standard Codes of Practice and the Tile Adhesive Manufacturer's recommendation for more information. If the floor does need to be overlaid, then the aqueduct will need to be raised in order that it remains flush with the surrounding floor. This can be done by simply inserting a sheet of plywood of the suitable thickness on top of the 18mm platform already created. Using a hole saw, cut a 50mm hole in the floor drain base component, and remember to remove any burrs after drilling. Place the base component into the recess in the top of the aqueduct and align the trap below with the 50mm hole you have just cut. Now fix the floor drain base component to the aqueduct by drilling and using the screws provided. Insert the 1.5-inch threaded waste fitting into the hole and using the tightening tool, tighten into the trap below. Leave the tightening tool in place until the tiling has been completed to prevent ingress of building debris. The first part of the aqueduct installation is now complete. Before beginning installation of the waterproof tanking membrane, check you have all the parts necessary to complete the job and that all the working surfaces are clean and dry. After thoroughly mixing the primer, use a brush or roller to liberally apply the liquid to the floor surface and allow it to dry. The average drying time is about 30 minutes. If you're fitting a DeviMat underfloor heating system, you will need to create a small groove in the floor to accommodate the tube for the sensor of the heating system. This will need to be approximately 10mm wide and 10mm deep, and lined with a section of the waterproof tanking membrane. Begin tanking the wet room floor at the corner of the aqueduct. Cut a 300mm length of the 150mm wide jointing tape and fold in half along its length. Midway along the length, cut the membrane to the fold line. Remove the top half of the backing paper and press firmly into the corner, bonding the tape to the wall and overlapping on the floor where you have just made the cut. Remember to remove the protective top sheet to allow a secure bond at the overlap. The edging strips can then be applied. It may be helpful to cut these strips into short, manageable lengths of about 1 meter each. To join sections of the membrane, there must be a minimum overlap of 75mm, and the protective top sheet must be removed from that area. Once the tape has been applied to all the edges, strips of jointing tape are applied to the floor to create an overlap for the main membrane sheet. Measure the width of the sheet of tanking membrane and mark a guideline for the edge of the jointing tape. Apply a strip of jointing tape using the same method as before. When applying the main roll of tanking membrane, it is easiest to first set out the sheet without removing the backing paper, in order to establish the position of the waste outlet. Ensure the edges of the membrane are pushed up to the walls and using the heel of your hand, press the membrane firmly over the waste position to create an indent on the underside of the membrane. Then take the 10mm spacer ring or height adjuster ring and mark the position using a pen. And cut along the outline to create a circular hole in the membrane. Remove the protective top sheet from the jointing tape and apply the membrane sheet in gradual manageable steps, peeling off the backing paper and smoothing out the sheet as you go. Repeat the process, butting each length of membrane sheet together. Press the membrane into the floor drain base component, pressing firmly to ensure a good seal. Remove a section of the protective top sheet and then apply solvent weld solution to the outer face of the center ring of the base component, taking care not to allow solvent cement to come into contact with the membrane, as this will cause permanent damage to the membrane. Then apply some solvent cement to the inner face of the clamping ring you removed before starting the installation. Slide the clamping ring onto the center ring of the base component, pressing firmly to securely clamp the membrane in position. Ensure the clamp finishes flush with the top of the tanking membrane. Seal all joins and junctions of the membrane using the sealing compound provided. If you have any pipe work that penetrates the membrane, you will need to seal around the pipe using the putty provided. Please note, should any minor damage occur to the tile-safe membrane during the installation, it can be rectified using the repair putty supplied. The installation of the Aqua system is now complete. If you intend to fit underfloor heating, you can now begin the installation. IMPI recommend that you only use the DeviMat 100 heating system over the waterproof tanking membrane, as other systems may reach temperatures that could damage the membrane. Installation of the DeviMat heating system will vary depending on the layout of the room and the position of the thermostat. The start and finish positions of the ends of the mat should also be carefully considered before installation. Apply the DeviMat gradually, a section at a time, carefully removing the protective top sheet of the tanking membrane as you go. And when you reach the edge of the floor, simply cut the mesh, taking great care not to cut the red wire, and turn the mat. Peel back another section of the membrane top sheet and repeat the process over until you have covered the required area in DeviMat. Maintain a minimum gap of 50 mm between the loops of wire to prevent overheating. The sensor and tube should be placed in the groove you created earlier. The room is now ready for tiling. Take the height adjuster ring and tiling frame and set it into the floor drain base component. Remember that for tiles 16 to 26 mm thick, you will need to fit the frame to the 10mm spacer ring. Set the edge of one of the floor tiles alongside the drainage outlet and rotate the tiling frame height adjuster ring, increasing the height until the top edge of the frame is approximately 4 mm above the edge of the tile. This is to allow for the bed of tile adhesive. Using a marker, note the position of the height adjuster ring in relation to the base component. You can now remove the height adjuster ring tiling frame and apply solvent cement to the contacting surfaces of both the plate and height adjuster ring. Set the ring back into position, carefully aligning the marks, and hold securely until the solvent cement has bonded. Once set, the frame can be rotated independently of the adjuster ring if required. It is possible to use either large format or mosaic tiles on the aqueduct, but remember that when using tiles larger than 50 mm square, it will be necessary to create a mitre or envelope joint in the tiles from each corner of the aqueduct to the centre of the drainage outlet. This is to ensure that the tiles follow the preformed gradient. Apply the tiles using a flexible 1-part cement-based tile adhesive. Do not use polyurethane or epoxy-based adhesive or grout. Do not use a ready mixed adhesive.